Hi everybody. Let's talk about what's on my shirt. Let's talk about the new Avengers film. This is gonna be a short one because there's really not too much to say about this one. It's an Avengers film. It is what you expect. It's very basic. Bad guy wants to take over, destroy the world, blow up some cities, do some crazy stuff. Just very basic evil villain motive, and various set pieces so that the Avengers can smash stuff up, occasionally smash each other up, and look cool. Yeah, that's the movie. And if you like that in the first movie, you'll like it in this movie. It may sound like I didn't like the movie. I liked it fine. It is good. It is a good movie. It was enjoyable. I am glad I saw it. It's really a mixed bag. There's some stuff I really liked in the movie, and there's some stuff I really didn't. This movie is at its best when it's punching stuff and destroying stuff. And I said to someone after we left the theater, because there's a scene, spoilers, a lot of property damage in this movie, as you could probably expect. And there is a scene where Iron Man and Hulk are fighting. You've seen it in all the trailers. Iron Man fights the Hulk. That's a thing that happens in this movie. And they literally, there's a building in the middle of the city, and there's a whole bunch of cranes on it. It's being built. So I guess the idea is nobody's in it. But at one point in the movie, they completely demolish this entire building. They go right through the center of it, and then it just falls down in a puff of smoke. And I was thinking, wow, no, if Superman did that, people would be outraged. But the Avengers, no, the Avengers get away with it fine. I'm okay with property damage in superhero movies. I get it. Hulk is being manipulated by the Scarlet Witch. She's got mind control going on. Gotta be stopped. There's gonna be property damage. You have godlike beings fighting. Pieces of the planet, literally, are gonna get smashed to bits. I mean, they try to mitigate it. That's the thing. They try to mitigate it as much as they possibly can. They have contingencies in place for when stuff goes wrong, but then when stuff goes even more wrong, property damage is unavoidable. I'm fine with property damage in my superhero movies. In fact, I kind of like it, because when they destroy stuff in these movies, it looks beautiful. I mean, does it even have to be said? I mean, can we have a moment of silence for the VFX artists who probably lost their lives trying to get this thing made? Holy crap! This is a beautiful, beautiful looking movie. I mean, like, even though we've seen this stuff so many times, they still look amazing. They still look great. The particle effects are great, and all the compositing is really great. The destruction dynamics are insanely gorgeous to look at. The explosions are great. I mean, things are getting ripped to pieces, shredded. You think about, and like there's like a robot army kind of thing going on. Ultron's got a robot army of him trying to destroy people, and there's a scene at the end, an awesome scene, where all the Avengers are just ripping these things to shreds, and you think about just the destructo physics on that, and just holy crap. And then you see cities being demolished, and I mean, you could call it, some people call it disaster porn, but I mean, when you actually think about what goes into that, and maybe that's, just the angle I'm coming at it from. I can understand how maybe, some audiences, also, you see it a lot, even if it looks good. I can see how you could kind of get fatigued by that. But I mean, it's so impressive. The people making these films, holy crap, they're like second to none. It's a beautiful looking film. The beginning action scene is very good. It reintroduces everybody to the characters really quickly. You see their powers all in action. You see them all taking down this Hydra force, and we're reintroduced to them in this long shot, this action scene. Very nicely done. Iron Man fighting the Hulk, that was very nicely done. Nice action scene. Quicksilver, anytime he's doing anything. What is it with speedsters in movies? I saw the, what's that film? X-Men Days of Future Past. And there's the speedster in that too. He's really good in that, and like he's maybe one of the funnest parts is the speedster. Same thing in this movie. Not so much the performances. We'll get to that a bit later, but it just, you know, moving really fast and the slow-mos and the fact that, oh, there's one scene where people are arguing and there's a problem and Quicksilver just, boom, he's off like a shot and then problem solved. It's just like, okay, that's great. Joss Whedon, very, very competent director, for the most part could follow all the action. Can juggle all of these characters pretty well. It is at the point where it's getting to be a bit much, the characters in this universe. But in this movie, it's all handled really well. You know who everybody is. You can follow who everybody is. Everybody, you know, they've got their simple traits. They say a funny line or a quip. And the dialogue that the people say, that each character will say, really matches their character well. Like, the character voices are really well written in this movie. Cap's lines are all about hope and honesty and doing the right thing. And it never really comes across as really cheesy. Really grown on me as Cap, actually. He really seems like that kind of just all-American hero. Really well cast, really nice. He's some of the better things in his franchise, quite honestly, is probably just him. You know, and Hugo Weaving, but I digress. Yeah, so all of his lines are really just hope and doing the right thing, and come on, we can do this, we'll be a team, kind of thing. And then Tony Stark, very much the opposite, very much, no, let's be rational about this, let's think cold and clinical and logical, and what can we actually do? What can we do with what we have given, what tools we have given to fix this problem? Very much like that. And so yeah, the character voices are really, really nice. They really come across. Everybody's kind of given their due. Even Rhodey gets a moment here and there and stuff like that. Would have liked to seen a little bit more of the Falcon. That's just kind of a personal preference. He was cool in the Winter Soldier. I really like what they did with his wings. His whole design was kind of cool. His look, and just who doesn't want to have a jetpack, right? That's awesome. So yeah, stuff like that is really well done, but a lot of the other character moments really drops the ball. You know, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, they're actually given a really nice backstory. Basically, it's a little different than the characters in the comics you remember. Probably borrowing some elements too, but basically they survived a harrowing kind of tragedy that, you know, kind of put them in fear for their lives for an extended period of time, and they blame the Avengers for that. And it's a very short scene where they're actually explaining this to Ultron and why they're actually helping him. But it's really gripping. It really works really well. So that's really well written. But, you know, the two characters, aside from their backstory, kind of fall flat. You know, they're not very interesting. They're not well acted. I'm sorry, but it is kind of adorable trying to watch those two pull off a Russian accent. It's kind of like watching a school play or something like that. It's like, oh, my kid, he's doing a thing, and oh gosh darn it, they're trying hard. So it's like you can't get mad at it, but it's like, oh, that's adorable. They're trying to do an accent. But the characters themselves aren't very interesting. I think that's kind of the problem. In Days of Future Past, you know, the speedster, kind of like the Flash too, wise guy, a hotshot, you know, kind of quipping lines and just kind of being a wise guy, that kind of thing, because, you know, he's fast, he can get away with whatever. He can just like, oh, you know, like, stop hitting yourself kind of thing. He'll just, like, smack you. You know, like, what are you going to do about it? He's a speedster. He can get away with it. There's a little bit of that written into this character, but not much. And maybe also just the performance makes a lot of those lines fall flat. Just some of the characterization just isn't really that interesting. None more so than the forced romance between the Hulk and... what's her name? Black Widow. Those two characters. It's just... I liked the Hulk in the first movie, and I liked the Hulk movie that came before that. The Incredible Hulk, I think it was called, with Edward Norton. And that was an interesting character in both those movies. You know, they kind of did a different thing. You know, Edward Norton was this kind of like mild-mannered, soft-spoken guy, and he's got this, and like they did the whole adrenaline thing where his heart rate can't get to a certain limit, and with Mark Ruffalo, however you pronounce it, his character in the Avengers movie, when we're reintroduced to him, he's like a man who's afraid of his power and is in hiding. You kind of get that in both movies, but kind of different shades of the same thing, and it worked really well. He's not as fun a character. He was a really fun character, and Hulk is a fun character, right? He's this big, like, gorilla, basically, who, you know, doesn't know his own strength sometimes and just kind of, like, acts on impulse, and, like, that's funny. You got, like, no better example than in, like, the Avengers cartoons and stuff like that, when he's cracking lines and then he's just, like, smashing stuff, and he's hungry, so he goes to the fridge and he, like, rips the door off the fridge and eats a whole turkey and just wacky shenanigans like that. That's the Hulk. He's a big green man. He should be funny, but he's just not that fun this time around, and it's not helped by the fact that we're forced to care about a romance between, you know, him and Black Widow, who I don't find that interesting as a character anyway, and I don't find Scarlett Johansson that interesting an actress. She's kind of a flatline for me, quite honestly. And having to care about their romance, it's so forced. From the moment they started doing that, I was just thinking, I wish they brought back Liv Tyler. Because, you know, she's such a likable actress. She's just sweet and, like, has that history. Her character would have that history. Betty would have that history with the Hulk at this point of just like, well, I've seen what he becomes and I kind of understand it. And they try to do that with the Black Widow calming the Hulk down. It's not really explained. There's some kind of code word they have where he just calms down. It seems like, you know, they were just trying to force something in there that isn't there. It's kind of like the romance between Tauriel and Killy in the Hobbit movies. There's no romance in those books. In that book, rather, it's one book. But they add in this romance with this between this dwarf and this elf, and there's like a racial thing, and then there's like some banter. But it's, I don't know, it seems kind of mild in that movie. It gets a little overplayed, but I mean, it seems kind of mild, and I don't know, maybe Evangeline Lilly is just just a more likable, kind of more interesting performer than Scarlett Johansson. I'm sure Scarlett Johansson has done well in other things, but yeah, maybe that's what it is. Maybe those two are just a little bit more interesting, the actual performers, and maybe it's just the fact that this is like a main plot thread in the movie. It's not like some minor thing. You could say it's like one of the main points of the movie. The movie is about ending the Avengers, kind of. It's about, you know, how do we make it so that we're not needed to save the world anymore, and or is this something we can just walk away from? Is this something we just have to keep doing as Avengers? And, you know, there's and it's kind of the most clear with those two characters, because they talk about running off together and how they're both monsters and they have dark secrets and tragic pasts and stuff like that, and how they're meant to be together and all this kind of stuff, and I don't know, it just falls flat. It falls completely flat. The more interesting relationship in the movie, actually, was Hawkeye and his wife. Apparently he has a wife. Spoilers. Sorry. But yeah, there are spoilers in a review. I mean, just know that at this point. Yeah, Hawkeye's got a wife, and he's got a little family there, and they're not given a whole lot of screen time, but that kind of relationship is a bit more interesting. Jeremy Renner is he's a really good actor, for one thing. I've seen him in other stuff, and he's really good, and he's also really likable too, just in and of himself. So he delivers his lines perfectly. It's another instance of a character they got right. So this movie does do a lot right. This movie is basically a silly, fun action movie, right? You know, it's like maybe like an Indiana Jones thrill ride, kind of, not in tone, but like action, adventure, superhero thrill ride, action and comedy and quips and colorful characters and colorful explosions and people shooting particle effects out of their hands and stuff like that, right? Maybe an hour and 45 minutes. That'd be good. I think this movie is something like 2 hours 20. And it's just a little bit long. I would say the exact same thing about the first movie. Little bit too long. The first one had a lot of hype. And it kind of met that. This movie doesn't have the same amount of hype. Because we've seen an Avengers movie done once before. And this is basically them doing an Avengers movie again for the second time. Okay, we did it once, let's do it again. And it works. It works perfectly well. It's perfectly serviceable. It looks great. A lot of people are just going to get a kick out of course, seeing their favorite characters team up together on a screen. And that is a lot of fun. Of course it's a lot of fun. The whole build-up thing is seeming really drawn out at this point. Infinity Wars has been on everybody's lips for a long time. And, you know, Thanos keeps popping up and making appearances and saying, I'll be there and I'll be back. And I'll do this myself kind of thing. And it's like, I'm coming. It's like, really? It's kind of like the South Park Game of Thrones joke. When are the pizzas getting here? You know? When are the dragons coming? When are the pizzas getting here? It's kind of feeling like that. You know it's coming, but like the longer it takes, like the more you're just kind of like, yeah, okay. Maybe it's getting a bit old, you know? Maybe it's like, because it's like, oh, we're hyping you for the next one, and we're hyping you for the next one, and we're hyping you for the next one. And it's just kind of, I think audiences are smart now. They're just kind of like, okay, we'll see when it comes out. I say this about a lot of movies now. A lot of the trailers make the movies look really good, but I approach everything with cautious optimism at this point. You know, don't judge until you see it, and I am hopeful that all of these films succeed, but I approach it with the realistic expectation that, you know, it's a gamble when you make a movie. It's a gamble. You can't please everybody. You know, sometimes a decision that works really well on paper won't pan out. There's a lot of things going on. So, you know, I hope Star Wars is really good, you know, but I won't be disappointed if it's not. Same thing with, you know, Terminator Genesis or the Jurassic Park movie that's coming out, or you know, any of the other, or Batman and Superman, any of the other Marvel Cinematic Universe, or the DC Cinematic Universe that they're coming out with. All these movies, I would love for all of them to be great movies. I would love for all of them to be amazing. I would love for each movie to break the mold of what these kind of movies can do. I would like each movie to be a game changer. I would love for that to be the case. I know realistically that's probably not going to be the case. And I know a reason for it is just sometimes my subjective taste of things I like to see in movies, or, oh, that, you know, that costume design, whatever. It's all subjective taste. Like, even, like, if a movie chooses a certain style or aesthetic or tone or whatever, sometimes it's not a bad movie, it's just not my preference. I can recognize that. I can recognize there are people who do like stuff like that. There are some movies, you know, some superhero movies I really don't like that other people really, really do. And, you know, sometimes it's just a tonal thing. Sometimes it's just subjective choices. But, so you hope everything's going to be good, but you kind of prepare yourself. I think you have to do that as a modern audience. You prepare yourself to not expect everything to live up to the hype, because everything is hyped now. Everything is just like, new this, and new Godzilla, and there's so many reboots now, too. There's, you know, they're redoing Red Dwarf. You know, what is that show, like 20 years old now? Like, really? They're making new seasons of Red Dwarf now? It's like, sure, I'll see it. I hope it's good. Why wouldn't I hope it's good? But, I mean, it's hard to keep that going, to be consistently good. To be consistently good is really hard, especially when you've been off the air for a while. They're redoing, like, Full House now, and there's new Ghostbusters coming out, and just, you know, all this, you know, just mining all this old material. Terminator, they're still making Terminator movies with Arnold in them. So, like, they're mining all this old material, and of course you hope it's all going to be good, but you also know in the back of your mind that they're banking on your familiarity with these properties. You know, the new Jurassic Park is, in all likelihood, not going to break any ground. It may be a brilliant film, but it probably won't break any new ground, not in terms of storytelling or acting or especially special effects. When Jurassic Park, I was watching a documentary about it while I was animating. I had it on in the background. Sometimes I would, just stop and watch what's happening in the documentary because it's fascinating. Jurassic Park, when they were doing it, was brand new, and nobody knew how it was going to be accomplished. And even when they were doing early tests with the Phil Tippett stop-mo animation, because it was all going to be stop-motion dinosaurs, right? When they were doing early tests of when they were doing early tests with the Go Motion, Spielberg basically said, it's close, but it's not there yet. And they didn't know. There was a point when they were making movies where they didn't know how they would get to the next level. And, a lot of great movies are like that. They're doing something that's never been done before. People who rush into it not knowing how it's going to be done, just knowing it's never been done before, and, okay, we're going to do it. You don't see that at the movies nowadays because these are all properties we're familiar with. And sure, it's exciting. It's exciting to see the Terminator up there again. It's exciting to see, raptors and T-Rex and hear those familiar noises again. Of course it is, right? It's all fun. Movies are fun. But, it's fun and it's familiar, but it's not very new. And that's kind of what this movie is in many ways. It's an Avengers movie. You've seen the first one. This is very, very similar. Evil bad guy wants to destroy the world. Excuse for an action party. Let's party, And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But it can get a little samey. It can definitely get a little samey. And, every once in a while you'll see a movie or a franchise try to do something new with an old familiar story, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, right? Like, in my opinion, the first, the Amazing Spider-Man, the first one, not the second one, but the Amazing Spider-Man, they tried to go a little bit, they tried to go less kind of 1960s, 1950s era strips, goofy with it. The Sam Raimi movies were very much in the early days of comics, the early days of Spider-Man. Even the look of Spider-Man in that movie was very much from, like, his first issue. He's got the same look, the big nerdy glasses. He was like the old school nerd. But they tried something new in the Mark Webb, Andrew Garfield film. And for the most part, it worked. A lot of the acting, very naturalistic, very down-to-earth. You got some heavy-hitter actors in there, Sally Field and Marty Sheen and Garfield and Emma Stone, and they just all really naturalistic performances, grounded, not completely in reality, but grounded more so in reality. And that was nice and fun to see. I like both versions of the character. Like, it's one's fun for when you want to be big and colorful and goofy, and one is fun when you want to take the character a little more seriously and see some really, really nice performances and less corny lines and stuff like that. Corny lines are fun too, but I mean, when you want the dialogue to have a little more teeth to it. So that was really nice when they rebooted that, and they started doing something new with it. And again, even when it fails, Ang Lee's Ang Lee's Hulk, the first Hulk movie that they did, was not very well received. I didn't like it very much. It was very artsy, but they were trying something new. They were trying something new. They were trying to show how, larger than life the Hulk was. Very kind of ethereal, a lot of just kind of like almost dreamlike imagery here and there, just larger than life everything. And even though I didn't particularly like the film, it was trying something new. It was trying something new that didn't necessarily work for me. Some people it probably very much did work for. I have a friend who kind of liked the interpretation of the Hulk, how he just, gets stronger and stronger and stronger the madder he gets. Fine. So that's kind of this talk about the Avengers, just like spun into this talk about just movies now in general. Yeah, no reason why you should take my advice, but if you're, making these kind of films, these kind of genre films that are, and genres come in waves, right? You know, musicals used to be popular and westerns used to be popular, and now those are like niche. And when they come back, it's like, oh, cool. There's a musical. You don't see many of those when they used to be, you know, saturating the market pretty much. We're experiencing that now with superhero films, with high concept sci-fi films as well, and low concept sci-fi films, and just, you know, action, fantasy, adventure movies, all these kind of spectacle, fantastic world, fantastic characters and creatures films. They're in vogue right now. They're what's popular. They're the hit of the day. And my hope if you're a filmmaker or a producer or actor or director, cinematographer, sound designer, whatever, anybody involved in this process, making these kind of genre films, just try to find what's new. Try to find a way to tell these stories, which are really, really familiar to us at this point, and find something new to say about it. Find a new spin to give on us. Because, you know, it's been some years since the last Avengers movie. So an Avengers movie now that's very similar to it, it's not really a bad thing. It's scratching that old familiar itch. It's not a bad thing. Some of the same problems are back. Some of them are fixed. Some things are different. But it's very much, you know, the pie you had before and remembered that you liked. It's very much what it is. It's that exact same pie when you order it this time, pretty much. But it still tastes pretty good. And that's not too bad when, you know, the movies are spaced far enough apart. But too much of that, too much of any good thing is just, you know, saturation. So when you're making these kind of films, just try to find that little something new. Try to find that little twist on it. You know, try to find a little something new to say with it or do with it, or just take it in another direction. Take that risk, because, you know, even when you try something and fail, you know, people can't really slight you for trying something new. They can say, oh, you ruined the movie, or you screwed up this franchise, or, you know, you did this or you did this, but nobody can accuse you of playing it safe. And that's probably the worst kind of film, is the safe film, the film that doesn't take any risk, that doesn't try anything new. And there are a lot of risks in these movies, especially when nobody knew if it was going to work the first time, right? When making this multi-movie cinema, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, like, we didn't have a term like that before. Cinematic Universe, what does that mean? But these series of interconnected, those separate films all coming together in this convergence, nobody knew that was going to work. So that was a huge risk at the time, because they weren't just banking on one movie being successful. It's like, oh, you have to care about and follow the characters in all these different stories. And it's like, yeah, but, you know, some people may like Thor but may not like Captain America, or they may like the Hulk but they don't care about Tony Stark. And so that was a big risk, getting everybody on board to care about all these characters and to care about them coming together. And you know, doing it a second time, you know, it's the same kind of problems with popular franchise. How do we keep everybody happy? Well, you can't. So what do? Do you try to please most people, or do a different spin on it? I'm not saying every movie has in it some degree of risk. For sure it does. For sure it does. You never know what's going to play well until it does, you know. But yeah. So so I'm not saying this movie is without any of that, but I'm saying it's beginning to look a little like something we've seen before. It's beginning to look a little familiar. It's beginning to feel a little comfortable. You know, it's and I don't want it to be the kind of thing where it's just like, oh, you know, another Avengers movie comes out, whatever. Like, I want it to be where the hype for the film is justified. Because it's like, oh, they keep doing these better and better and better and better. And you know what? At the end of the day, more of the same, if the same is pretty good, isn't that bad. But you don't really want it to be a pattern either. You know what I mean? Like, if they made 12 Avengers movies after this, and they all felt basically the same way. That would kind of be a waste. You would want them to try new things at a certain point. You would want them to maybe branch out, maybe just focus on a smaller group of characters, stuff like that. Yeah, that's another thing. Don't fall into the X-Men trap of having way too many characters in your cast. They kind of retcon that a bit in that franchise by just kind of going back to, you know, X-Men Origins, you know, origins of Magneto and Professor Xavier, or just focusing on Wolverine, and that way getting rid of, like, all these characters, maybe reducing a few side characters, but, oh, there isn't this huge army that I have to care about, this, like, Dickensian cast, this Harry Potter cast of characters that you have to follow each one. You know, so many examples you could use with that. Game of Thrones too. Care about who's who, how are they related to, you know. I think you'll know if you're gonna like this movie before you go see it. So, I mean, that's basically the review. If you think you like it, if you like the first one, you probably will. I know someone who didn't see the first one and said they didn't like this movie. I can kind of understand why. I can understand why. You don't really need that backstory, just superheroes fighting. You know, you don't really need to see the origins so much of this team. But I can see how that would help. That would definitely help if you're not into comics or you don't know any of the lore or the backstory. I wasn't expecting to be blown away by this film, and I wasn't. So I was satisfied. I was definitely satisfied. If I expected to have my socks blown off, I would have been disappointed sitting down for this film. But I expected another Avengers movie, and that's exactly what I got. So yeah, that was my review. That went on a bit longer than I thought it would, but you know, that's what happens sometimes. So cheers, adios, and assemble.